Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to solve LeetCode problem number 2482, difference between ones and zeros in row and column. So in this problem we are given zero indexed m by n binary matrix. So binary matrix means the matrix consists of only zeros and ones, and we are going to find the difference in the matrix, a difference of number of rows, number of ones and number of zeros in the row and column. So for let's look at this example over here in this drawing tool. So basically in this example, for this particular row and this particular column, so we are going to find the number of row zeros and number of ones and find the difference. So what are we going to do is we start from the first row and first column, and we now find the number of ones. So what is the number of ones or number of zeros? So basically for this row we find the number of ones equals to 2, right? So number of ones is equals to 2, number of 0 is 1, so we just subtract the number of 0 from that. And similarly for this column also we are going to find the number of ones, which is equals to 1, right? So we are going to add a 1, and number of zeros, which is 2, so we are going to subtract that. The result is equals to 0 over here. So basically that's what we have in this difference matrix. So we are going to do it for all the cells in this grid, but as we are traversing over this matrix, so first of all we are at index 0 comma 0. Next we move on to index 0 comma 1. So basically how are we actually evaluating the number of zeros and ones? Are we going to find like again the number of ones and number of zeros in this particular row while we are at this cell? No, because that would increase our time complexity. So we want to minimize our time complexity and we want to solve it in O of n times m time complexity. Okay, so to solve this in O of m times n time complexity, we are going to use a space complexity of O of m times m plus n. Okay, so space complexity of O of m plus n. All right, so this is plus n, and this is a multiplication sign. All right, so O of m plus m space complexity means that we are going to create an array of size O of m and of size n. Okay, so m means number of rows, so basically we are going to create an array which should store the number of zeros and ones in rows and in each row, and number of zeros and ones in each columns. Okay, now once we are storing, so basically we would store the number of ones in the first row, so that is equals to 2, right? Number of zeros would be equals to 1. So do we need to like store? Okay, let me just solve this, and again we do the same for the second row. So for the second row we have number of ones equals to 2, number of zeros equals 1 again, and for the third one we have number of ones equals 1, number of zeros equals to 2, right? So we have 2 over here. And what about the column? So we are going to do the same for the column. So we find the number of ones, which is 1, and number of 0 is 2, right? So 1 and 2, and for the second column we have number of ones equals 1 and 0 equals to 2. Okay, so 1 2, and for the third one we have number of ones 3, number of zeros 0, right? Now that we have our array, these are the number of ones, number of zeros, number of ones, okay, and number of zeros. So now we subtract for each of those and basically create a matrix. So for index 0 0, row with index 0 0 and column with index 0 0, we are going to find this value, right? So 2 minus 1 plus 1 minus 2 gives us value for this one. Now for row 1 and column 2, row 0, so this is row 0 and column 1, right? So row 0, so we have 2 minus 1, which is again 1, and then column 1, so this is column 1 index. So for that we would be doing 1 minus 2, which is minus 1. So 1 minus 1 gives us 0. So what are we doing here? Basically we are kind of like repeating the same task, right? We are taking the difference between this and we are doing the same, right? So we are just taking the difference of in one and row for all the given index, right? So instead of creating different matrix for ones and zeros, what we can do is we can just combine this by just finding the difference. So difference in row, so difference in row would be 2 minus 1, which gives us 1, 2 minus 1 gives us a 1 again, and 1 minus 2 gives us minus 1. So now we have difference row array, and similarly we create our difference in column array, which is equals to 1 minus 2 gives us minus 1, 1 minus 2 again gives us minus 1, and 3 minus 0 gives us 3. So now that we have these two matrix, what we do is, these two array, we are going to use these two array to find our matrix, right? So for row 0, column 0, we would just take add these two values, because these are basically the number of ones, right? So we are going to add these two values, and that would give us our first cell. For the second cell, which is 0 1, we take the first row and the second column, and then we add them together, so that gives us 0. For the third cell, for cell 0 2, we take the first row, 0th row, and the value at index 2, which is 3, and that gives us a value 4. So basically that is how we will be finding the difference in this matrix. So basically talking about time and space complexity, so this is time complexity and the space complexity. Now let's dive into our code. So let us first define our m, which is greet.length, and n, which is the number of columns, that is greet at 0 length. Okay, now that we have that, let us define our row. So difference in row equals, which should be our new array that would be of size of a row, which is m, and we are going to fill the values initially with 0. And similarly, let us also define a difference row array, which will store the difference in number of ones and zeros in for each of the column, and we are going to fill that with 0. Now that we have both our rows and columns, now we are going to find the values for these two arrays. So for that, we are going to iterate over each of the cell in our grid. So for I equals 0, I is less than m, I plus plus, and for let j equals 0, j is less than n, j plus plus. So for each of the row and column, now we are going to find if the difference, if the value at the given grid I j is equals to 1, that would mean that we want to increment the value of 1. We found the number of 1, right? So for that given row, that is row I, we are just going to add the value, and for that given column, since the value at that column is equals to 1, we would increment the value of 1, right? Now if we found 0, so 0 means we want to subtract from our difference row, right? So that is what we are going to do here. If we found 0 in that given row, then we are just going to subtract it, and similarly we are going to do it for the column at index j as well. So this would give us our difference in zeros and ones for each of the row and column. Now using this, we are going to find our matrix. So let us define our diff matrix, which is equals to which is equals to new array that would be of length m, and we are going to fill that and create a mapping to create 2D array. So new array of length m. Okay, so it would be a 2D matrix of length m times n. And now here what are we going to do is we are going to iterate starting from index 0, since we want to fill this difference matrix. So starting from index 0 and all for all the rows and for all the columns, j is less than n j plus plus, we are going to calculate the difference matrix at index I j, which would be equals to difference of row at index I plus diff of column at index j. Okay, so this gives us the difference in that particular cell, and we are going to return our difference matrix. Now let's try to run our code and check if this works. All right, great, it's accepted. Let's submit this. Awesome. So we are able to solve this with O of n times m time complexity and O of m plus n space complexity. So this is O of m, this is O of n space complexity. So we are just adding these two space complexities. And for time complexity, since we have a for loop which is O of n, and that is within our O of m for loop, which is iterating over m rows, right? So that becomes O of m times n. So yeah, that's all about this solution. Let me know in the comments down below what do you think, and thank you so much for watching till the end.